In this video, we are going to learn how to assemble and disassemble the clarinet properly. If you're not familiar with the parts of the clarinet, I suggest that you take a look at the video so you can familiarize yourself with the parts of the instrument. Let's begin. The three things that I am going to get right now are my bell, my lower joint, and I know that this is my lower joint because of the thumb rest, and my cork grease. As you notice that a lot of these parts have this cork. This cork helps keep the clarinet together. However, there are times where I'm going to need cork grease. Most likely you will need to add some cork grease to make sure that the clarinet can assemble properly and so it can fit. So I'm going to do that right now. I have my cork grease here, and I don't need a lot. I'll put a little bit on here. After that, I'll rub it in, and so I have a nice coating of cork grease on the cork, so when I attach my bell to the lower joint, it will be much easier. When I'm handling the lower joint, I want to be very careful. I don't want to bend any of the keys, and so when I handle the instrument, I notice this area here doesn't have any keys poking out, and this area here has no keys. This is the back of the lower joint. So what I'm going to do is I have my palm right here, and my palm is going to hold the back area of the lower joint. My fingers, I'm going to put them here, and the reason why is this prevents me from bending or crushing any keys. This also gives me the opportunity to hold the instrument firmly so I can twist my bell and my lower joint properly. It's important to remember when we're assembling our instrument that we do small twists, but we also come inward. Let me demonstrate that. Have it lined up. Small twists, and I'm holding here so I'm not pushing down and crushing any of those keys. And there we go. I have the first half of my instrument. Now that I have my lower joint and my bell assembled, it's time to assemble the upper joint and the lower joint. Now, it's really important to remember that the upper joint has a very special key. It has a special key called the bridge key. So this is the top part of the upper joint. This is the lower part of the upper joint. And when we have these keys, I like to call them the jelly bean keys, we have a key under there. And this key under is called the bridge key. This key is really important. It helps align our instrument properly, and it also helps us play. If we damage the bridge key, we will find it difficult to play, and we'll have to get the instrument repaired. So in order to prevent that, I'm going to demonstrate how we should handle the upper joint and how we assemble the upper joint to the lower joint. Now that I have my upper joint here, I need to remember to grease my instrument. So I'm going to grease this part right here. All right, so now I have a coating here greased. Now it's time for me to assemble my lower and my upper joint together. Now, when it comes to making sure that we don't damage our instrument and we make sure that the bridge key doesn't get messed up, there's some things that we have to remember. Number one, small short twists are the way to go. Why? Because when we have our instrument, we have a lot of keys. We have a lot of keys here and a lot of keys here. And it's important that when we assemble our instrument that we don't make really big twists and have our keys collide. This is one of the reasons why students have problems with their instruments, because they don't always assemble it correctly. So it's important to have those small twists and make sure that you put the cork grease on the cork. Now I'm going to share with you how to hold and handle the instrument. One of the things that you're going to notice is that this bridge key goes up and down. This key here in the upper joint makes this key move up. See it moving up and down? The reason why that's happening is I'm hitting this key right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have these keys on my palm. Here's my palm, it's my left hand, and I'm placing it here. And what happens, and you see how I have my thumb, so I'm holding it right here. What happens is it allows this key to raise. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to get my lower joint. Now the lower joint is the joint where we hold the instrument with our right hand. So here's our thumb rest, and so I hold the instrument like this. Now, one of the things that I want to make sure is that this key, this is the other half of the bridge key, fits under this. Let me demonstrate how I do this. And when I'm showing you this, I want you to take the time to notice how I'm turning the instrument and that I'm slowly moving inward to connect both parts together. I have it here lined up. And if you notice, these keys are lined up, the bridge key down here. Small twists. Now I see these keys right here. The goal is to have this key lined up. And so I'm checking to see if I have that. It's almost lined up, but if you notice, it's just a little bit crooked, so I want to change that. That's an easy fix. I've aligned it up, and I see that this looks much better. And if you notice, looking at the clarinet in the front, these keys here line up with these keys, right? It's like all the dots are connected. So if you're wondering, hey, how does my clarinet look? The jelly bean keys are on the right side. We have our big keys here on the left side. And also another thing to look at is the back of the clarinet. This is an also good hint here. You have this back key here next to the string bean key, and you see it lines up with the thumb rest. Making sure that the bridge key lines up correctly is really important. And by checking some of these other points, it's going to help us see that we have it correct. Next up, I'm going to put the barrel and the upper joint together. Now, for me, I like to hold the instrument on my lap and hold the upper joint like this. So I have this barrel, I hold it this way, and then I have my upper joint that I have secure. The reason why I do this is because I don't want to drop the instrument, and I want to make sure that I feel comfortable and I have everything where I need it. So if I don't have the clarinet handled properly, I could possibly damage the instrument. So I'm going to share with you how I put the barrel and the upper joint together. Using that cork grease, put it on here, rub it in, have that coating of cork grease. And sometimes you're going to find that the barrel sometimes is a little bit hard to get on. That's okay. Just make sure you put enough grease. As you continue to play your instrument, that's going to not be as much of an issue. Now, we talked about the thumb rest and how it's the area where our right hand holds the clarinet. However, I just want to say when we're putting our barrel to the upper joint, we don't want to have our right hand so low. What I'm going to do is I like to have the clarinet in between my legs on the chair so it's secure. The next thing that I like to do is I'll have my right hand hold here. You can use left or right, but I have a tendency I use my right hand, and I'm holding the clarinet up here. And the reason why is, if I have my hand here and I'm trying to put this on, that's too difficult. If I have my hand here and I try to put this on, that's also difficult. It's always easier to have your hand closer to the area where you're trying to connect. So I have my upper joint and I am holding it here. The clarinet is balanced on the chair as well. The clarinet is secure, it's not going to fall. I have my cork grease already, and now it's time for me to put my barrel on the upper joint. It's very important though, remember this, you don't want the upper joint to start twisting and possibly hit these keys. Another reason why I'm holding this here. Small twist, and make sure that you're pushing also downward. Line it up, small twists, and I'm twisting the barrel, not the upper joint. Pushing downward as well. And now I almost have a full clarinet. The next thing that I'm going to assemble is the mouthpiece. Now the mouthpiece goes last when we're assembling. When we're disassembling, that actually winds up being the first thing that we take off. Actually, it's the reed that's the very first thing that we take off when we disassemble. But right now I want to talk about assembling the instrument and how to put the mouthpiece, it's this right here, on the barrel. So if you notice, we have some cork here on the mouthpiece. So just like it before, I'm gonna add that cork grease, gonna rub it in, so I have that coating. And when I handle the instrument, I'm gonna hold the barrel and I'm going to line up the mouthpiece in the barrel, and I'm gonna do the small twist pushing downward. Now, in order to make sure that I have the mouthpiece in the right place, I have to make sure that the opening of the mouthpiece lines up with the string bean key. We have our mouthpiece, and there's our string bean key. That's how we know that we have it the right way. So we're going to put our reed and our ligature on next. I have a video that is dedicated on how to put the reed on the mouthpiece. So I want you to check that out so you can see all the details on that. However, I'm going to also do it again, but I do encourage you to see that video because you'll get to see all the details. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to get my reed. So I have my reed out. I wet the reed because it helps it vibrate. And if you notice, I've already taken the reed out of the case. Have my reed. And now I want to line up my reed with the mouthpiece, like so. I don't want it to stick out or be crooked, so I need to line it up. And if you notice, look at how I'm holding the reed. I'm not holding the tip, I'm holding the heel of the reed. The heel is the bottom of the reed. I want to avoid touching the tip because the tip is the most delicate part. I don't want to break my reed. So if you notice, I'm using my thumbs to handle the reed. So the next thing that I'm going to do is get my ligature. And I talk about how ligatures are kind of different for everybody. There are so many different types. This is my ligature that I use. Your ligature might be similar to mine, or it might be different. It might have those dials. That previous video that I'm talking about is going to help you learn more about that. So now that I have my reed lined up on my mouthpiece, and I'm holding it here in my thumb, I'm going to really slowly slide my ligature down. Now that I have my reed lined up, and sometimes you might have to realign your reed when you slide the ligature on, I want to make sure that my ligature is low enough and not too high. So there's a dial here. Pretty much all ligatures have dials, and you want to loosen it up. So I'm loosening the dial, and usually left is to loosen and right is to tighten. So I'm going to loosen my dial, and I still have my thumb on the heel of the reed. I'm going to lower my ligature. Again, you notice I'm not touching the tip. And if I feel like I need to make adjustments, I use my thumb to handle the reed. Now I'm going to tighten the ligature. And sometimes when we tighten the ligature, we might have to readjust. So you might be tightening it and then you see, oh wow, I didn't realize my reed was crooked. Easy. I'll take my thumb and I'll adjust it here. I'm using my thumb to hold the reed here, and I'm adjusting and moving the reed left and right here. The reason why I keep my thumb here is I don't want to touch the tip, and if my ligature is loose, there's a possibility that my reed might fall out. So it's just about making sure that it's secure. This is going to be so easy after you do it so many times, it's going to be second nature. So now that I see that everything is aligned the way I want it to be, and maybe I want to bring the reed up a little bit, maybe I have it too low, I'll push up a little bit here, handling it right here, and now looks good. Now I'm going to tighten it. So I'm tightening it with this dial here. Now I have my clarinet fully assembled. It's important when we finish playing our instrument that we put our instrument away. The reason why I say that it's important to put your instrument away and to not leave it open outside is we don't want to have like dust, too much dust getting on the instrument, because that can compromise the quality of the instrument. We also got to make sure that we don't want any pet hair like getting in the instrument, or possibly even someone knocking the instrument down. That would require us to get the instrument repaired. So in order to avoid that, it's important that we disassemble the instrument properly. Now, if you recall, I started with the bell and lower joint, then I assembled the upper joint, and then barrel, and last but not least, we ended with the reed, right? The mouthpiece, reed, and the ligature. Well, we kind of do it kind of opposite now. The reason why we have the reed as the first thing that we take off is because it's so delicate. Reeds are made out of cane, the tip is really thin, and so what that means is there's a greater chance of it splitting or cracking. Let's avoid that by taking it off. So the first thing that you're going to do is to take off the ligature. All right, so we're going to loosen that dial. And I talked about putting my thumb on the heel of the reed, that's the bottom of the reed, because I want to keep it secure, so I'm going to do that again. I'm handling the reed here, and I'm going to put it sideways so you can see, and I'm loosening the dial. The next step is to carefully raise the ligature up and to take the reed off. Now, sometimes you might find that the reed will stick to the mouthpiece. Doesn't matter, you still want to have the thumb there because we don't want our reed to fall. If a reed falls, it could break. So I'm taking off my reed, and now we see our case. In that reed video, I show you how to put the reed in the case properly. I'm going to slowly and gently slide it in. And now I have my reed secure, and if you have a case like this, depending on what brand you get, I believe this is like a Rico brand reed case, I have to make sure that I don't push this in too deeply. All right, so now I have my ligature off, and I need to get my mouthpiece off. So the way I do it is I'm holding the clarinet here, and I have it also balanced on the chair. The reason why is I want to make sure it's secure. So I'm handling the instrument here, have my hand here, have my left hand here, and I'm going to do small twists, and I'm going to be pushing also outward. I have now my mouthpiece out, and I have my clarinet in my lap. What you don't want to do is to have your clarinet standing like this and it knocked down. All right, the clarinet, unless you have a stand, a clarinet peg or a clarinet stand to hold the instrument, you don't want to do that because it can fall. So now that I have my mouthpiece, I'm going to get my ligature, and I'm going to slowly slide it back on, and I'm going to tighten it a little bit, and then I'm going to put it back in the case. In order to make sure that the mouthpiece is safe, because the mouthpiece, we don't want to mess up the tip, we're going to get our cap. I call it the Darth Vader cap, and I'm going to slide it in. Now, some caps have a very specific way of putting it on. Make sure that you put it on the correct way. Mine has this funny opening here, and that's how I know where to put it. So now I have my mouthpiece and my ligature safe, and I'm going to put it away in my case. Now it's time to disassemble the rest of the clarinet. I have my hand holding the upper joint, and I'm going to, with my left hand, do those small twists and move outward to make sure that I'm able to get the clarinet disassembled. The part that's twisting is the barrel, not the upper joint. So I have a good firm handle on the upper joint, and I'm doing those short twists and moving upward. Now I have my barrel, so I can put that away. So remember we talked about that bridge key? A bridge key is really delicate because it helps us keep that instrument aligned. And we want to make sure that we don't have the bridge key, the top of it hit the bottom, or these keys collide with these keys. So again, it's important. I'm holding the clarinet like this. You can see how I'm handling it. My right hand is holding the lower joint. And instead of this way, you notice here, I have it this way. It's the same way when I assemble it. I'm going to do those short twists. Move upward. Take your time. Last but not least, we're going to get that bell and that lower joint off. Remember I talked about how I was holding the clarinet, the lower joint, not to mess with those keys, right? Because they're delicate. So I have my palm here, right, the back, holding it right here. As you can see, I have this firm, and I'm doing those short twists, and I'm pulling outward. Sometimes you might find it tricky to get the bell off the lower joint. Okay, take your time and make sure that you're holding the instrument firmly, and make sure you remember that we have to push outward as well. So we're doing a pull outward as well. So we're doing a combination of the small twists and coming out, okay? All right, so once you have your instrument put away, you gotta make sure you put it in the case. Okay. When we're putting our instrument away in our case, it's really, really important that we remember that the keys always face up. That means we'll always see these keys. What we don't want to do, and what you're not going to see, is the keys face down like this. So it's important that we put the right joint, right part, in the right place. Now, remember we talked about the thumb rest? We know that goes with the lower joint. There's going to be a little bit of a dip in the case, and you're going to see that. And basically, there's like every part of the case has like an imprint. Like for example, we have an imprint of the bell. This definitely goes in here, and we know where the barrel goes, okay? So it's important that we make sure that everything fits properly, and that we remember that everything has a place. So remember those jelly bean keys? Well, we know the jelly bean keys go here because we have that little area here, okay? So that's another clue, is if we have this little space here for the jelly bean keys, I'm not going to put it this way because the jelly bean keys won't fit. We want to make sure we don't bend the keys. A good rule of thumb is the keys will always be outward, right? Same thing with the ligature. We're always going to have the ligature face outward, all right? Now it's time to put our instrument away. Make sure you close it, but, you know, depending on the case, and we talk about this with the parts of the clarinet, is you got to make sure that you handle the keys properly by closing it. So some of us have zippers, others have latches, but whenever you're finished, make sure that you close the case, because sometimes we're in a rush, we move quickly, and we grab our instrument, right? And when we grab our instrument too quickly and the case is open, we could spill the contents inside. Our precious clarinet will not be safe if we do that. So we have to make sure that it's cozy and that it's sleeping in its clarinet bed, and that is in the case right here. And just like I had stated in another video, when we open the instrument up, ta-da, here's our clarinet. Woken up, ready to play, right? So make sure that the keys stay upward, and also depending on the case that you have, some cases have extra compartments where you can like put your reed in, put your cork grease. For me, my extra compartment is here outside. Everybody's case is different, so it really depends on what case you get. All right, this is how we assemble and disassemble the instrument. Have a good day.